But I don't even know, honestly, if winning this game against the Panthers 33-10 was the highlight for the Cowboys on Sunday. You're probably saying to yourself, what is a bigger highlight than a Cowboy victory against an opponent on Sunday? It happened before the game even started. Many of you have been around for a long time. I am not one who is a lifelong Cowboys fan. My dad didn't put me up on football. Hell, my dad didn't even, I don't even know. My dad didn't even come pick me up. So my great-granddad we didn't sit down and watch Cowboy games. It wasn't a part of my family Sunday activities. Most of you that I'm talking to, not all of you, but a lot of you, and a lot of you that follow me in my other programs, whether it's Believe in the Cowboys or Hanging with the Boys or ADD Sports Dallas or on Twitter at Mr. Fourth and Long, most of you are Cowboy fans. Most of you are my age, 40, or older, and you've been a lifelong Cowboys fan. Your daddy's daddy was a Cowboy fan. His daddy before him and his daddy before him set them on their knee and they watched Cowboy games. And it's Dandy Don Meredith. It's Billy White Shoes. It's Roger Staubach and others. And then it comes to the 90s. And there was a lull in what was happening. And then all of a sudden, in comes this coach from the U. And they take this 1-15 franchise, and they add a quarterback. And he said, I had this kid that played receiver for me in Miami. We're going to add him. And I'm going to start putting these pieces together. And voila. A dynasty was formed. And the Cowboys go on and they win the next 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. And Jimmy Johnson was the orchestrator, the chef, the creator of this dynasty. And infamously his quote is, "How about them Cowboys?" And then there was the beef. And then they split. Jimmy went to South Florida and marlin fished and did some other little coaching and never looked back. And Jerry called Barry Switzer and said, hey, will you come stand on the sideline while this team that you don't really got to coach? I'm no offense, Barry Switzer, but you ain't had to coach that squad. That squad was already ready to go. And gifted Barry Switzer a championship, and Jerry went on about his way. And years and years and years, and the triplets go in the Hall of Fame, and guys like Nate Newton goes in the Black Hall of Fame, and you see all of the accolades, and all these players begin, and he gets the Ring of Honor, and he gets a yellow jacket, and he gets the Ring of Honor, and he gets a yellow jacket, and everybody's looking around and going, where's Jimmy? And people have written books. Gary Myers have written books, and Jimmy Johnson has written books, and Jerry Jones has had statements. And it's all back and forth, and people have had questions, and people have had thoughts, and people have had their opinions about what happened between Jerry. They've done specials, they've done My Life, they've done all the type of stuff, and still, there was no Jimmy Johnson and the prestigious Cowboys Ring of Honor. Now, little old me, I look at if a person plays a sport, and whether that's the Ring of Honor or whether that's the Hall of Fame, if you can't tell the story of that league or that era without mentioning that person and their impact in it, they need to be honored. Whether that's the Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor. Right? Like, you can't tell the 2000s, the 2010s, and even some of the 2020s without mentioning the name Tom Brady. Can't. So guess what? If you can't tell that story without mentioning his name, guess what happens? This is the guy. I mean, and the numbers prove so, but he's a Hall of Famer. He'll be a. So if you can't tell the story of the Dallas Cowboys, if you can, and you can tell it without mentioning Jimmy Johnson, you a bad somebody. You a bad storyteller, in a good way. But you can't. You cannot tell the story of the dynasty and all these great players that we see on TV and that we hail as being the gods of the sport and your daddy's daddies and you, and now you're telling your kids about these players, and you're still now hoping and wishing and dreaming and saying, we need to get back to that point again. We need to have that moment again. Boy, you're saying this is our year because of what they did in the 90s, and that's because of this man. But Jerry Jones, I don't know what happened. I don't know the full story of who put it together, who got these two men in the room, because they know each other. But for whatever reason, Jerry had come finally to the conclusion that probably people are going to say, you don't say that. Arguably, I'll say arguably, and y'all can argue amongst yourselves. Arguably, the best coach in Cowboys franchise history. Now they're going to say Tom Landry. I know, I get it. Whoever's dad is still living, he's going to say, this is the problem with you youngsters. You don't understand history. I'm going to say arguably. Y'all can argue amongst yourselves. You have the First Amendment right to do so. But arguably the best coach in Cowboys franchise history. Finally, Jimmy Johnson on December 30th, as Jerry said, in 1923. No. In 2023, January 30th, Cowboys versus Detroit at halftime, the great Jimmy Johnson will finally be inducted into the Ring of Honor. Now, I don't know if you're superstitious. I don't know if you're a little stitious. I stole that from my boy Scott. But some may say that the Cowboys have suffered these 27, 28 years of misery because there was a curse put on the franchise. And this franchise was cursed to hell because Jerry never honored Jimmy Johnson, putting him in the Ring of Honor. Now, I don't know how curses work. I am a believer of Jesus Christ, and we do not believe in curses. But I don't know if curses, if now him being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I don't know if curses end immediately, like when they do the announcement at halftime and pull the sheet back and his thing is up in the ring. Does the curse end right there? And we have hope for the playoffs? Or does the curse go like a calendar year? Like, you got to wait another calendar year for the curse to fully be broken. I don't know how it goes, but some may say that the curse is now broken. And things are happening special for this Cowboys team. Dak broke a record a week ago, going to a class of only 4 other players who have 10-plus 400-yard passing. CeeDee Lamb broke an NFL record a week ago. 3 weeks in a row, 10-plus receptions, 150 yards apiece. Deron Bland is tied for a record. I mean, things are happening. This team's blowing teams out at an astronomical number. Things are seeming to come together, and I don't know if this is the finishing touches to that, but Jimmy Johnson's going in. And we'll find out what happens later on with that. But that wraps it up. That wraps up that game. The announcement of the game was actually better than the actual game, but Jimmy Johnson on December 30th against the Detroit Lions, Troy will be in attendance. He wanted to make sure that Troy Aikman, I heard from some sources that Troy was the one that kind of got these guys together and said, listen, fellas, neither one of you are getting any younger. Stop the griping and moaning and you did something special together. Jerry, you get credit. Jimmy, you get credit. Together, whatever that has to look like, y'all need to figure it out, but that man needs to be in there. Let the grudges go. And he did. So, Jimmy Johnson, the ticket prices, if you didn't have tickets to the Detroit game, you ain't getting them now. I can promise you. Like, some people's Christmas list just changed. If your daddy's still living, I know what their Christmas gifts are. If they're Cowboy fans, they want to go to that game. They want to finally see that before they go to their grave.